Occult Veritas SCP Files. Episode 4 Siren Spikes. Incident 162-19. 19th known incident involving SCP-162, colloquially known as the Ball of Sharp. Object Class: Euclid. Risk Assessment Level: Moderate. Reported by D-479, real name not provided. Report made June 18th, 2023. Officer's comment. As I review this report, several alarming details catch my immediate attention. The pages are stained with small droplets and smears of blood, increasing in frequency as the report progresses. The text is peppered with expletives, which I will omit from my reading. Additionally, stapled to this report is testimony from a security officer revealing D-479's resistance during the report's creation, with repeated attempts to leave and refuse writing. Despite initial bandaging, D-479's hands began bleeding anew when he first picked up the pen, exacerbated by his continued efforts to resist. Security notes that compliance only occurred after threat of termination. The report is as follows. I ain't telling you nothing about who I am or why I'm here as a D-class. Let's just say my victims had it coming, okay? The researchers said write? Well, I'd like to see them write with shredded hands. Enough of this. I'm leaving. They won't let me leave. Are you happy? You? Whoever's reading this? You're probably enjoying it, aren't you, you sick person. One moment. Let me just, Okay. Officer's comment. I've censored the remaining expletives. Moving on, the report delves into several paragraphs of taunting directed at security officers and Foundation staff, which do not in any way appear to pertain to the incident itself. The security log notes, D-479 makes multiple attempts to leave at this time, until he is threatened with termination again. The report then continues. Fine, I'll write. But they better stitch my hands back up after this is over. It's your fault, all of you, that this happened. You stick us in these rooms, and you run tests, and you don't even tell us what could go wrong, or what we're dealing with. Test the tensile strength of 162's central chords. Yeah, that's worth getting all sliced up over. What did you even really learn from it, huh? I can tell you its tensile strength right now. Way too damn strong. 162 was the ugliest thing I've seen here so far. A twisting mass of all the sharp, awful things you could think of. Fishing hooks, needles, scissors, razor blades, barbed wire. I think I even remember seeing some scalpels in there. And you all just sit around with your feet up going, "Yeah, send him in there. Let's see how strong the nightmare ball is." Next time, go yourself. There were 3 of us running the testing. One researcher, who mostly stood in the back, giving orders and scribbling in a notebook, completely useless. Me, and another D-class, 857. I don't know his real name, and honestly, I don't care. They did gear us up, for all the good it did. Gave us these thick, steel-plated gloves and heavy body armor that stretched over our arms and legs. Made it tough as hell to move, but I felt protected, at least going in. What a joke. We all went into the containment room, and at first it's fine. We were only touching the fishing and barbed wire parts, staying far away from all the little cutting pieces that looked particularly sharp. It was slow, us 2 prisoners looking through, finding the right piece, carefully pulling it out to extend it and test the strength. Before we knew it, the whole morning had flown by, and it was actually all right. We even stopped for a break, retreating out into the adjacent hallway to slowly eat a handful of sandwiches. That was when the other D class started acting real weird. The researcher was droning on, something about a decrease in the overall strength of the wires. I don't know. It wasn't even slightly interesting. But that sandwich sure was. It was actually good. That awful, bland, gooey slop we're forced to choke down here becomes normal after a while. But this was like a real sandwich from a real deli, and it was actually something with taste. I'd almost forgotten what it's like to taste. I tried to savor it, but it was far too good for that. 857 wasn't even eating his. He just had his gaze locked on the door to 162's room, and he was looking at it almost longingly, like he couldn't wait to go back in and resume the testing on that weird ball. He'd taken his gloves and armor off for lunch and just kept playing with it all, fiddling and twisting and picking. That look on his face, though, it was so lost, so rapt. He was sitting there with us, but he was so far away. Far enough away that it was easy to swipe his sandwich. Idiot. Hey, he clearly wasn't sane enough to appreciate the rare chance at real food, and I wasn't about to let it go to waste. He doesn't pay attention, he doesn't earn the food. His sandwich was even better, to be honest with you. Real roast beef. It was good, and I kept thinking how stupid he was. Honestly, that moron got what was coming to him. When it was time to return to work, I don't know why he didn't put the gloves or the armor back on. The researcher didn't check, and I've been asked why I didn't either, as though it's my job to babysit the other D classes here. It was 857's own damn fault. Why am I getting the heat for it? You all are the ones with your fancy monitoring equipment. You should be the ones paying attention. I'm in there risking my life, so take your lectures and shove them. I remember 857 reaching for the ball as soon as we stepped back into the room. That same look of rapture on his face. For a moment, he looked peaceful, almost happy. And then the hooks embedded into his flesh, and just the most awful scream I've ever heard filled the room. He thrashed, trying to pull his hand away, but instead he just pulled the whole damn thing towards him. I swear, it was as though the ball itself was moving, reaching out towards him with sharp metallic tendrils. A razor-like needle slipped into the crook of his elbow, and it was mere seconds before his whole arm was engulfed, the fish hooks rending deep into his flesh. I jumped back to avoid it, as did the researcher, both of us just looking on in horror as we tried to understand what was going on. D857 raised his leg to try to kick off the wiring, but that thing caught him instead, the barbs ripping through his pant leg with ease and embedding into his calf and lower thigh. All the while, that pained scream just went on and on. The researcher ran from the room, just dropped his notebook and bolted. Coward. I wanted to as well. I didn't know this man. I should have left too. But he was begging me, pleading, his free hand outstretched towards me, weeping for me to save him. I had no idea if I could. He was soaked in blood, making it impossible to tell where his skin ended and the sharps began, and it continued to swallow him, slicing into every part. And when it reached the top of his leg, It was then that I acted. Something about watching the hooks bury into the seat of his pants and wrap around his... Look, I'm not a sensitive guy or anything, but even I'm not gonna leave a brother to that fate. I grabbed his hand, and almost immediately lost my grip. His skin was so slick with blood. I grabbed it again, and managed to cling on, pulling him with all my strength. I'm sure it hurt like hell, but 857, he started smiling. All of a sudden, I wasn't pulling him away from the thing. He was pulling me towards it, telling me that it felt nice, that he wanted to stay, and that he wanted me to join him. Even with the barbs closing around his waist, his pull was strong, and I was leaning forwards and too off balance to fight back. The fish hooks bit into my left wrist, that little tiny gap between the steel gloves and the body armor, and began to pull me in. The pain was... I can't even begin to describe it. See, I've been fishing before. I've had mishaps with the hooks. It sliced up my thumb a bit. This was so much worse. I reared back, not wanting to become part of the ball like 857 now was, and the barbs pulled down on my wrist and under my glove, piercing my palm. I felt my skin tear, the hooks ripping through flesh and tendon, carving a hole clean through my hand. Even now as I write this, that particular hole aches and throbs so much worse than the other cuts. And there were other cuts. I tried to reach in to uncatch my left hand, figuring my right hand was gloved and therefore safe. But it was the same problem. The hooks and needles snagged that little space, that tiny gap at my wrist, and all of a sudden I was buried up to my elbows. The pain was unbearable. I could barely breathe between the screams. Hey, I'm not ashamed to say I was screaming. You'd be screaming too, probably way worse than I did. I ain't no girl. 162 knows just how to get you, however. There are these moments when the agony is too intense, when your brain just gets overwhelmed and numb with it. Those are the moments that it changes, and the most intense euphoria comes over you. You want to stay there, to dive in deeper. The hooks suddenly feel right, like they're meant to be there, like the mass of sharp somehow loves you, It wants you to be closer, to fully mesh with every part of you. And it's so hard to resist that pull. I think I was about to give up and just let it engulf me. Why bother fighting it when it wanted me so badly? But that's when the researcher returned, backed up by about 5 security officers, each geared up in the heavy gloves and armor. He was holding some sort of driving dummy. SCP-1114, he called it. I didn't want to know. I didn't care. It hurt too much to think about anything else that was happening. I still don't know how it actually worked, just that it did. It didn't repair the cuts already made, but as the officers carefully and gingerly detached me over the course of an hour, no new cuts were made. I still felt every slice, of course, every stab of pain as they dug the hooks out of my flesh. But somehow, whenever a new cut should have been made, it suddenly just wasn't. And as they dragged me away from the room, I could see that mannequin's hands were covered in long, deep slices. 857 didn't make it. Too much trauma, they said. Too entangled. They terminated him on the spot. Serves him right for trying to pull me in. For that, I wish they'd let him live in there, in agony, embedded in that thing until the blood loss got him. There, I wrote what happened. Am I done now? The cuts have all reopened, and you owe it to me to close them again. It's all your fault. I hope you're so proud of yourselves for the research you got from it all. I hope my permanent nerve damage was worth it to you. Alright, I'm done here. That was awful. My hands itch now. That awful tingling you get when you have a healing cut. And the whole report just leaves me with more questions. What was with the driving dummy at the end? SCP-1114? There must be more reports involving that one. I'll keep an eye out when sorting through the pile. Anyways. The designation D-47-9 has been used on many prisoners before. However, I find it likely that the person involved in this incident was Lucas Bennett, as he apparently died the same day this statement was given. Termination. It says here that he was terminated as part of the unimprinting process of SCP-1114, which is not particularly helpful without more information on that one. I do have access to the information, so I can always just look it up, but if it's as horrible as the ball of sharps... Perhaps if I...
Knock, knock!
Ah, Niall. Come in. Back again so soon?
Don't pretend you didn't miss me.
It is nice to have someone to talk to around here. It gets very quiet.
There are others around. It's just been so busy since the breach. I actually came looking for Merriweather. He said he was going to pop in to meet you, and I thought I might, catch him when he did.
He hasn't yet.
Ah. Well, he's the Ethical Standards Specialist for new SCPs. It keeps him quite busy. There are always more anomalies found, every single day. I'm sure he'll be around soon.
Well, I'll let you know when he swings by.
Thank you. Don't mention it to him, though. He has other things to worry about. Don't need him worrying about little old me.
Sure. Secret's safe with me.
Thanks. So, how are the reports going?
Just finished recording a particularly nasty one. SCP-162. You know, the ball of sharp.
Ah, yes. I'm familiar. The memetic influence of that one is rather insidious. It's been a pain to keep the incidents at bay.
Memetic? The report made no mention of that.
Really? Someone touched it willingly?
Well, it did mention that the guy had a weird look of longing on his face.
Oh, well, there you go then. Gets in your head. Compels you. Nasty business, that one. Best practice is to just stay away from it. It's not like it's going anywhere, so best to just leave it be and not even look at it.
Simple enough, I suppose. Ugh.
Still uncomfortable? You're rubbing your hands.
Just something I read.
Yep, 162 will do that to you. Tell you what, come take a walk with me. Get a bite to eat, clear your head a little.
I'm not sure. I mean, I still have to write this up for Miranda to...
But. Come on. It'll just be a minute. You can't make me go to lunch all on my lonesome now.
All right. I suppose the write-up can wait. Let me just turn this off.
Vault Veritas SCP Files is a podcast inspired by the SCP Foundation. Siren Spikes is based on SCP-162 by Dr. Gears from the SCP Wiki located at scpwiki.com/SCP-162 and SCP-1114 by Crane located at scpwiki.com/SCP-1114. It is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike 3.0 Unported License. This episode was performed by Justin Gellner and D.R. Thompson, and it was written and edited by Leola Angel. We welcome comments. Please email us at vaultveritas@gmail.com. Join our Discord channel using the link in the episode description. Or if you'd like, visit our Patreon, listed as Vault Veritas SCP Files. Thanks for listening.